Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory. And thanks for joining us on Parental Advisory. Anthony.
Claudine.
Today, we're talking about some expat tax, renunciation tax issues.
Yeah. Not taxes for those Americans living overseas, but for those Americans who no longer want to be Americans and give up their U.S. citizenship so that they can escape the tyranny that is the IRS. And that's really the only way to do it. You know, if you're looking to, you can't move. If you're a U.S. person, there's nowhere in the universe you could go where you would not be subject to the taxation of the IRS because the IRS has universal tax jurisdiction. So really what you have to do is renounce your citizenship. I would say this, it's not really something that's done a lot for people unless they are some sort of dual citizen. Very popular in Canada where somebody was a Canadian citizen, on their birthday or the date of their birth, the hospital that they were going to wasn't open, so maybe they went across the river to the U.S. side of the falls and were born there. Now they became a U.S. person for their entire life. You know, in a case like that, it's pretty obvious, you know, if you don't identify as a U.S. person, really not much love lost, pretty easy thing to do. I will tell you this, a lot of people talk to us like, oh, you know, this IRS, they're out of control. I'm going to expatriate. I'm like, all right, that's fine with me. I get it. You know, okay, but where are you going? What kind of passport is that? And you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you know, they go through it, but a lot of people don't.
Yes, and, you know, you keep reading all these reports that people are leaving in staggering numbers. It's not staggering. It's definitely growing, but it's still like 2,000 or 3,000 people a year.
Yeah, which is nothing. I mean, it's really not even an amount. And I think, you know, people want to have some evidence to say, here, IRS, you're out of control. This is what you're causing people to do. But I'm telling you, that's not persuading them. I mean, they're just out of control. I mean, you don't need that. You know, that wouldn't be really all that much proof that they're out of control. If you can't tell right now that something's wrong, I don't know what would ever persuade you.
So today we want to talk about quickly how to make sure you do it correctly, and then some rumors we'd like to dispel.
Yes.
Okay. So doing it correctly, expatriating correctly is very important.
Right. That you have something, you know, with the State Department you have to renounce, but you have to file a certification with the IRS to certify that you were in compliance with the tax code for the last 5 years. And for a lot of people who are thinking about it, we do have a lot of clients in Europe, you know, dual Swiss, U.S. person. Yeah, I definitely, you know, in that case, they definitely want to do it. There's no love lost again. So a situation like that, like, okay, well, I'll do my streamline for these years. And then sometimes we'll time it to say, okay, well, the next year you'll be in compliance, year after that. So on this date is when you're going to expatriate. Or sometimes we'll look at our 3-year look back period and say, well, if you want to do it now, we'll just have to do another 2 years, which that's fine. You know, yeah, let me get out as soon as I can.
Yes.
So that happens a lot. And also in Australia, because the IRS does have that horrible taxation of the superannuation funds, that's also a place that people tend to look to renounce their citizenship properly. The downside, and especially someone with a superannuation fund, is there is that exit tax if you have stuff.
Yeah.
The IRS says, yeah, we're going to lose out on all this taxes.
So before you go.
So before we like our taxes. And I'm not going to get into it too much, but just like anything in this world, there is a way to plan to lower your exit tax.
Legally.
That's still legally, right. Yes. There is a way to do that. And the form that you file, it's a form 8854, is the form that you file with the IRS. And I was looking at an article I wrote in 2013, and I think might be where we segue into one of the bigger rumors. Because I heard this, you know, and when I was writing this article, I'm like, I didn't see anything that actually supported it. But it says, like, you cannot renounce your citizenship for income tax or for tax avoidance purposes only. I heard that, and I was thinking, I'm like, that seems kind of crazy because, well, there always has to be another reason besides income tax avoidance, because one of the other reasons is you had another place to go. Right? So how could it be solely for that? I'm sort of baffled by this, and I'd always kind of research it, and I never really got a good answer. And luckily, on one of the groups I'm on Facebook, Citizenship Taxation, really, really helpful post by one of the members.
Oh, Tricia Moon.
Yep. And she were the Canadian Sovereign Society, I believe.
Defense of Canadian sovereignty. Yep.
So, you know, obviously it's a big issue to her. You know, the Canadians get fired up about it with good reason. And so she had some really, really helpful links and just some, you know, she was dispelling a lot of myths. And she got me hip to just a wonderful report. This is actually one of my favorite government reports I've ever read. It's called The Inadmissibility of Tax-Based citizenship renunciants. Renunciants is the word.
Yes,
right?
We're going to give you a quotes from it.
Right, and by the way, I'm actually not being sarcastic. I mean, this really is. When you see kind of like you're putting these things together here, you're trying to figure out, because basically, this is what happened. Congress says to the Homeland Security, "Hey, why aren't you, stop? What are you doing to stop people who renounce citizenship for tax purposes only from entering the country?" Which is kind of ridiculous, because let's just assume there was such a law that existed. But you're talking about like $1,500, $2,000, 2,000 people a year who've renounced citizenship total. So now you're gonna. All right, so there's each year, so we have there's 50,000 people in the world who've done this, and only a percentage of those are the ones who are doing it. And now you're tasking Homeland Security, because they don't have anything better to do. Hey, don't let those guys in here, because they're going to come to the U.S. and spend money and stimulate the economy. Don't let them in here, right?
Yeah, the other rumor is not only can you not expatriate for tax purposes, but if they find out you did, you're never allowed back in the United States, not even to visit.
Not even to visit. You don't care if your mother dies.
You
don't care. You're never going to come back, so you better be careful about doing it.
So this happened, it was 1996, and the reason this all sort of came about was something called the Reed Agreement. It was passed into law in 96, part of the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of I forget what that was.
What's the anagram for that? Does that say something funny? Does it have like a...
I can't believe they didn't come up with one.
Yeah, I know, right. They could have come up with...
So it was written by Jack Reed, House of Representative, who stated that people who renounce their citizenship for the purposes of tax avoidance should not be able to return to the United States. Yeah. It added the following text to the classes of aliens ineligible for visas or admissions. Former citizens who renounce citizenship to avoid taxation. Any alien who is a former citizen of the U.S. who officially renounces U.S. citizenship and who is determined by the Attorney General to have renounced United States citizenship for the purpose of avoiding taxation by the U.S. is inadmissible.
So this is where it all comes from.
This is where it all came from.
Some congressman has an idea.
Right.
Right. And I mean, you'll always get reelected. You'll always get reelected by demonizing somebody. I mean, that's really the thing. Like, this could just be no one's thinking like, oh yeah, this could just affect me because I'm a regular person. They're assuming some demon in the background. And I mean, all these Congress people, as terrible as they are, they're all reelected for a reason. They know how to get reelected. They know what people want to hear. So as much as we want to blame the Congress people, voters are pretty crappy too.
Yeah.
Pretty uninformed. You could be, you can be as uninformed as you want to be. And I'm telling you this, your vote counts just as somebody who is. Just as much.
Now, the issues came up because the U.S. government never issued regulations to implement the Reed Agreement. They had some ideas on how they wanted to do it, but they never actually came up with a process.
Well, okay, so then what are we going to do? So the Reed Amendment is there. So the Reed Amendment was passed into law. But nothing's happening.
No.
Okay.
Part of the issue is they're saying, how can you prove that it was motivated by tax? Unless somebody actually comes out and says, I'm leaving because I want to avoid taxes. How do you prove that?
Well, I mean, there's other ways. I mean, you don't know if somebody actually didn't file an F-bar willfully.
Right.
So you look to external evidence, but I guess this is a very difficult one to say, well, look how much money he saved in taxes, right?
He definitely left.
Right, he definitely left. He didn't like what we were doing to him. Look how much money he saved. Therefore, he must have left. Right, so I mean, it's pretty easy to find some sort of grounds. Now
not really.
No?
Because now who determines if you've left for taxation purposes?
Well, the IRS.
No.
Okay.
It is the Homeland Security Office, like you said.
Yeah.
But the Attorney General is never authorized to obtain the required information from the IRS in order to make a determination whether a former citizen was motivated by tax reasons. So if the IRS isn't even involved in this, how do they figure it out?
So what you're trying, I mean, wait, if I get you right, is that Congress, who is full of the world's biggest geniuses, I mean, just geniuses, they're upset that these government bureaucrats didn't implement a law that is sort of impossible to implement. And they're wondering why, demanding answers. I demand answers. The American people demand an answer. Why are you letting these 1,000 people back into the country when, it's really something else here. And I think this is where you start to get to, when I read this report, to me,
awesome.
The report is written, and we'll have a link to this report. It's written by somebody who's trying to humor a moron. To say, they could easily say, oh my, you guys don't even read what you write, do you?
Yep.
You are so fantastically stupid that this is what you want to put, this is what you want our resources to be put upon. Okay, well, we can't put the manpower into this, but we are going to put the manpower into creating a pretty well-documented 9-page summary to, and maybe if you're smart enough, you realize what we're doing here. Maybe you'll know that you're incredibly stupid.
Yes. And so it's the name of the report is the Inadmissibility of Tax-Based Citizen Renunciants, released November 30th, 2015 to Congress from Homeland Security. So it was sort of a letter. Dear Congress.
Love
Homeland Security.
This was one of my favorite parts in it, and this is on page, I think, 3 of the PDF.
Okay.
Of what Department of Homeland Security is saying, are you guys nuts here? So they're saying, okay, although the U.S. Internal Revenue Code at 26 U.S.C. sections 877, 877A currently applies an expatriate tax to renunciants who trigger objective standards based on the average annual net income tax, net worth, and past tax compliance, it would be difficult to rely on the imposition of such a tax as the basis for determining that a person who is subject to a tax subjectively renounced citizenship for tax avoidance purposes, as Section 212A10E requires, particularly if an individual in fact complied in paying any liability resulting from the expatriate tax provisions. So they're saying, you dummies, there's nothing on the form that says it. There's no determination. And you are putting us in a sort of an awkward position that we're going to say, oh yeah, this person who complied with everything of the U.S. income tax is probably leaving because they don't like the income tax. And that's just their nice way of saying there's nothing here. And there's no way, the government has no way to collect the information. And I think yesterday, you and I were talking about this. Let us suppose that you are somebody who does want to renounce for to avoid the U.S. tax. You are determined, and you're a man of principle or lady of principle. I'm going to fill out this form, but on the form, I'm going to put on, I am renouncing 100% for no other purpose than to stick it to you.
Yep.
If that happened, there would be nothing that could happen because that form field, there's no input for that form, for that field. Second of all, there's no way to share that if that did happen with anybody who could possibly do anything about it. So we're sort of left with this Reed Amendment that can't possibly in any sort of way be ever implemented because there's no triggers, and no one in the government is going to do this. No,
and I forget who came up with it. They wanted to implement a plan. Okay, so let's say they're going to have one employee at every airport. So if somebody flies in, you have to go to that person and say, I renounced, but I want to come back. And then they're going to investigate if you can come back.
Oh.
And now, what if it's what if it's a Saturday morning and the IRS can't be reached? Do you make them hang in the airport till Monday? How do you prove? I mean, there's just no way to actually implement it.
Congress loves taxes. And I mean, they love taxes so much they will soil themselves with such tenuous reasoning and ideas that this is the money we're missing out on. Like, look, that's our money. That money those taxpayers have, it's ours. They just can't take it out of our jurisdiction. Well, all right, if they do, you're going to have to give us a piece first. But if they do that, we're still looking for a way to get them because really, we love their property is our property. That's the way that's the way Congress looks at it.
Yep.
There's what you have is really theirs, and you are their partner for life, unless.
So another thing I like about this report is, I don't know if people have if they read a lot of government reports, but they're very wordy, they're very lengthy. And I love this report because it's literally like, 5 actual pages of information, really short paragraphs.
Yeah, it's actually really good because it doesn't go on forever.
No, it's like, hey guys, this isn't going to work.
Right.
So can I read the conclusion?
Yes.
Which is our favorite part? Okay.
This is our favorite part.
So they talk about the summary. They talk about the introduction summary, things like that. And then there's just a 1-paragraph conclusion.
Yeah.
Despite the legal, operational, and policy challenges to the full implementation of Section 212A10E of the Immigration and Nationality Act, the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of State remain committed to continuing to strengthen lines of communication, improve information sharing, and develop more consistent protocols to ensure that both departments are aware when a renunciate admits that he or she renounced U.S. citizenship for the purpose of U.S. tax avoidance. They just said a whole lot of
nothing. We're not going to do anything is what
Yes.
that was. That was just, that was brilliant. That's so, because
so well written.
Look, they got to, they know, they're smart enough. You're in the government. If you go and attack someone's and just call them out as a moron, there might be blowback to that. So just come up with some gobbledygook, and they're not smart enough to understand that. Like, you didn't say anything at all.
And it's so passive aggressive.
Right.
It's so passive aggressive.
And that's what's so much fun. It's like you can kind of imagine someone gritting their teeth.
Yeah.
As they're writing this, and they must have had fun when they're like the people writing is like, oh yeah, well don't say that because all right, say that they're too stupid to understand what we're saying there.
Yes.
And there was one more thing. I think there was one more thing where they basically just said, "There's no way in hell we're going to do this," and they said it in the nicest possible way.
Yes.
And was that in the direct? They mentioned that there was. Oh, geez, we had this the other day.
Was it the last? It's Anthony. It's only 5 pages.
I know, right? What's my problem here?
Jeez,
I'm not. Where is it? Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll use the old Control F.
Yeah.
Direct was what I. That was. Let's see here. That was the key because they said it lacks a.
Yeah, they must have had fun writing this.
Ah, there it is. There
Okay,
it is.
all right, let's hear it.
Thank you. Control F. So I'm going to read it.
Okay.
And hopefully I can remember what my thought was. At the time Section 212A10E was enacted, expatriate tax liability under relevant provisions of the Internal Revenue Code generally was based on whether an individual's intent upon expatriation was to avoid taxation. But Congress has since amended the tax code to eliminate a direct connection between expatriate tax liability and a renunciant's intent. It doesn't matter what your intent is, according to the tax code. So it's not even there. That was my favorite.
Yeah.
They had such a beautiful, to eliminate a direct connection.
Hey guys, this law you want to enforce, do you know you made an amendment where the law doesn't really exist?
There's no law. That is the best. That is, I think, some of the best writing. How you have to write to a government agency that's going to set your funding. Mm-hmm. There's people there you don't want to offend. Maybe you want to send a secret message to other people to say, you guys all, right? You guys are morons, right? Okay. You see what's going on here. So that's what it takes to be a skilled government bureaucrat. It's far more difficult than it is. I think they had a lot of fun with this, and hopefully they are able to spend a little bit more time on some of the more essential functions as opposed to the handful of people who So basically, it doesn't. You can expatriate. I would say, can you expatriate for tax purposes exclusively? Yeah, you could. No one's ever going to know.
No.
So go ahead and do that. But just to be safe, say you have a other reason.
Maybe not update your Facebook status.
Don't do that. Still come out and say it. Just fill out your exit form, pay your exit tax. And you're done. Don't worry about someone, coming around looking for you. Clearly, Department of Homeland Security, even if they have the ability, isn't interested.
Good advice. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, and engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com, and you can like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent & Parent, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.